Welcome to Sound Advice with Phyllis Nichols. This podcast is for women and the men who love them, who are determined to make a difference in the world. You'll hear from other women who followed their own path to success, who are willing to share what they've learned along the way. Be ready to laugh, learn, and be inspired. Who knows, your story could be next. Your host, Phyllis Nichols, will make sure you see the possibilities in your own life, and even better, give you proven strategies to get you from where you are to where you want to be.
Welcome to the Sound Advice podcast with Phyllis Nichols. Today I'm really delighted to have a guest with us, and we're going to be talking with Melissa Bradley Ball. I know her as Missy. Hey, Missy, how you doing?
Hi, Phyllis. I'm great. How are you?
Good. Well, let me tell you guys, just so that I'm very fortunate to have known Missy for a little while. Let me give you a little bit of background so you know a little bit about her. She is a nationally recognized clinical educator. She really is in the field of psychology and training, but she really trains the trainer. She is notably known for her work in the resilience and helping people navigate the heroic journey. That's something that that I've actually taken a couple of her online courses, which have been really great. She's working all over the country and has trained not just thousands, probably tens of thousands?
A couple of 100,000.
Oh my goodness. Okay. A couple of 100,000 of professionals. And, she's also, you've done a PBS documentary that's going to be airing soon regarding resilience in children. Is that right?
Absolutely. Children healing from divorce and being able to not have any of the after effects that sometimes we see. So it's really about the heroic journey for the whole family.
Wow. Well, I love that, and I'm a big fan of the heroic journey work that you do. And I want to let people know on the website, and I'll be giving you some information too at the end where you can get more information about Missy and her work, how you can reach her and her contact information. But for our conversation today, Missy, and I know this is probably something that might be hard for you, but I know, we're all about giving some sound advice to our audience. And one thing I would like to ask, and I'm sure I know that you could fill books full of good information. What is a piece of advice, though, that you have that has served you really well in your life? Something that could have been either recent or from a while ago? I mean, what's a piece of advice that maybe you find yourself returning back to?
Well, two things, I think. One is that I do have strengths that even when I look back on challenging times, whether professionally or personally, that I was able to get through them, even though they felt really crummy at the time. In retrospect, I found that not only did I make it through those things, but I also learned wisdom and very needed and useful information as I reflect back that has helped me in current journeys. And the second thing is that the life journey, even though it seems chaotic and unpredictable at times, when you kind of look at it at the 35,000-foot level, it actually is quite predictable, and we see this predictable framework in the majority of the blockbuster movies and great literature.
So if somebody today is listening and they're struggling, either maybe just personally or in their business or in an aspect of their life, mm-hmm. I love what you said about the fact that, the journey is part of it's part of our path. It's part of our learning, right? Like and it makes us part of who we are.
Absolutely.
Right. So maybe not to be fearful of the journey, but when you're in the midst of something really challenging or really hard or very dispiriting, sometimes it's really hard to see that, though. It's hard to kind of get a piece of that clarity.
Absolutely, and I do want to add one piece, is that fear is a natural part of the journey, but believing that the fear is always accurate is not true. So we may feel fear, and it really isn't true in the sense of that we're not going to be able to make it through, et cetera. So fear is a pretty normal part of the journey.
Right. Okay. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think fear is something that obviously all of us deal with in a variety of life circumstances. But I know sometimes fear, we give it a lot more power, maybe sometimes by kind of buying into the fact that, oh, if I do this, it stops us sometimes from doing good things, like what if I fail? What if it doesn't work out? It also obviously sometimes serves us to be cautious or to be aware. So if somebody's really feeling sort of fearful or feeling stuck and buying into sort of the notion of fear, what kind of advice might you give that person in that place to be able to acknowledge the fear?
Well, I think that two things is that when we go back and reflect on a previous experience sometime in our life and we kind of break it down, we often see that there is a common theme in the fears that we have as we face new life experiences. The second thing is that if we find a way to get centered or grounded or mindful, as the buzzword now, then we can, I help people to learn the difference between that very prudent and appropriate concerns and just free-floating anxiety. So it feels different in the body. Intuition and something that's trying to guide us is typically going to feel very different, literally at a gut level. So helping people to get still. I like to use the image of imagine you're standing in a pond, and that because you've been kind of maybe frantically searching or trying to come up with an answer, it's muddy, but you're trying to see what's on the bottom, and that you have to get very, very still in order to see with clarity.
Okay. Oh no, I like that. That analogy. And good.
Sometimes life does afford us a lot of.
Nope, I'm here, but can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay, dropped out for just a minute. So why don't you, I can edit that. Why don't you pick up with sometimes in life, you were saying something about the stillness, I think?
Sometimes in sometimes life doesn't afford us the ability to spend a lot of time in getting still, that we have to take action. And that's part of why kind of a practice of getting grounded and centered professionally and personally is so critical. And it doesn't take a lot of time. It may take 3 to 5 minutes 2 or 3 times a day just to get grounded. So, and there are a lot of different ways people can get grounded.
Oh wow! Well, yeah, that's great. And so that then that becomes a kind of a tool or a real aid that we have that we can lean on when we do find ourselves in a cycle maybe of anxiety about something. I do like your suggestion too to look for patterns, because I know in my life I find there are similar things that have caused me concern or caused me fear, and obviously I've come through some of those over the course of my life. So being able to look back and say, how did I handle it then? How did I get through it? What might I do differently? That's certainly helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And so tell me a little bit, I love the word resilience. Would you mind, I know what the sort of Webster's Dictionary of resilience is. Would you mind kind of giving us the Missy definition of resilience as it applies to the work that you do with people?
Yes, it actually means not only to be able to bounce back, but to move further forward in that bounce back. So it's not just coming back to where you were, it's going beyond where you were. So, and that happens not only intellectually, but physiologically as well. So we build kind of resilience muscles, and the more that we use them, and the more that we also practice it, to see, okay, what are some of the good things about this? Those begin to help change a habit in how we see the world around us.
Oh, wow, I love that. I love the resilience muscles concept. That's actually kind of cool, and I find it, just as a person, I find it really reassuring to know that not only could I be resilient, but that I could get better and better at it. That's actually very, it feels good. That feels really encouraging to me.
Well, part of it is that we begin to trust that we will be able to bounce back. So it begins to shorten the intensity of the times where we feel either lost or kind of in an anxious spin. So when we begin to really believe, okay, this is uncomfortable now, but I will find a way. I trust that I will be able to find a way forward, and that I'll be able to make the best decisions because my history shows that I have. That's really helpful.
No, definitely. Now, so tell me, if we can pivot just a little. So we've talked a lot about, this being able to sort of come through and understand how it applies to sort of life's journey. But for somebody who's listening, if they're in a place of either fear today, or they're listening to this podcast sometime down the road and they're in a challenging spot in their life, whether it's just professionally not knowing what to do, or personally, or what have you, like right now in the moment, if someone is really struggling with some fear, or feeling like they're not, what kind of piece of advice or two would you do, maybe to help them be more mindful, or help them to be a little bit more grounded? What's something that they could grab onto and really take advantage of?
Well, if someone is trying to make a decision between 2 or 3 directions, that's a real common one, and it can really cause a huge spin with people. Mm-hmm. One of the things is they bounce back and forth between the pros and the cons within minutes of one another, so they never really sit in any one decision. So I usually recommend that, depending on how much time they have before they have to take action, let's say ideally they have 2 weeks to make a decision, I would have them choose one of the options, and to do kind of it's sort of a mindset, almost a mind game of, okay, this is the direction I'm going to go, and that for several days, 3 or 4 days, they're sitting in, okay, this is my decision. Now, I recommend that they don't sign legal documents, and they don't invest financially in this. This is a mental practice, and that they sit in the decision for 3 or 4 days, and they really, because it gives us the depth of what are the questions that come up. There's also, this sounds kind of Shirley MacLaine-ish, but there's literally an energy that happens where people begin to feel either more anxious, or they begin to feel a sense of relief, and they need to take note of that. Okay. And then after 3 or 4 days, then they take what is the second option, and they live with that for 3 or 4 days or longer if they can, trying to just keep the focus on imagining they have made that decision. And usually that really, it slows the spin, it slows the anxiety, it brings up really valid questions, and then those may be things that people will have to do a little investigative work, but part of that is just getting the sense of stillness. And it comes back to, we make our best decisions when we come from a place of peace, if at all possible, And again, that mindfulness is also a mindfulness muscle as well. That we all have that kind of hamster wheel in our brain during times of big transitions, So,
right.
It's really important to get still, mentally still.
Well, right. Well, I like that advice, and I can see I'm just thinking back about some situations I've been in. That really, I think, would work. And something else I want to touch on really quickly before we finish is the concept or the idea of, you've mentioned several times throughout our conversation today about physiologically. So really, there's definitely an element that I think some of us ignore, and that's really paying attention to our bodies, paying attention to how we physically are feeling, maybe paying attention to whatever people call it, their intuition, their gut, or their third sense, or whatever they call it. I know I certainly feel my intuition kick in a lot, and sometimes I override it, and sometimes I listen to it. But can you talk just a little bit about that? Because that's come up a couple times, and I do think it's something we sometimes discount or maybe override or overlook?
Absolutely. One of the things, when we get really anxious, it begins to dim. Imagine there's a rheostat on our brain, and the more anxious we get, the more the seat of judgment begins to turn off. So if we center in and notice, first of all, notice our breathing. And most people in a time of great anxiety usually are holding their breath, or they're not breathing at all, or they're breathing high and shallow and rapidly. So the first thing to help get that centeredness is to regulate our breath, because when we're not regulating our breath, first our memory goes, short-term memory into long-term memory goes, and we're not tapping into that seat of reason in our brain. I mean, literally, it's like the internet is running very slowly or not working at all. So if we do a very simple thing is take a breath in 2 counts, hold 4 counts, and out 6 counts. So that begins to calm the body, so we can begin to tap in. Now, true intuition, as we learn to separate anxiety from intuition is very calm and laser-like. But people have to be able to recognize that for themselves. But most people, when they have a sense of knowingness that this is the decision, most people feel a sense of certainty and calmness, and usually it's fairly quiet.
Okay. No, that's great. I love that. I love that breathing exercise too, because that's something that you can do obviously anywhere, anytime. I didn't know that. Obviously, this makes a lot of sense. When you mentioned that, our sense of reason, we're really like at the time it feels like we need it most in a period of maybe anxiety. We can access it sort of less, right? So we just need to get back to a place where we can kind of calmly be able to really make good decisions.
Right. And there are 2 things that I think can be really helpful. One is some people are going to do better if they get away, take a walk, notice the smells and the sounds around them. Something I've recently done is, the adult coloring books is the big rage. And
yes.
That is an incredible, even Harvard and Yale have done a lot of research about how it grounds us back in our bodies. So, it works really well. It really helps my hamster chatter. So the only decision I'm making is, do I want red or green for this part of the picture, So,
right.
So even that's a really great one. And people have to find whatever works for them. And that's part of trusting your intuition of what seems to be calling you right now. And we may say, I don't have time for that, but that may be exactly the time that we need to take 20 or 30 minutes to do that.
Right. Oh, that's terrific. Well, I appreciate this. This has been fascinating, and I could talk to you a lot longer about these topics. But for today, I do want to finish up and ask if there's any additional, you've given us a lot of great tips. Any additional, little piece of what I would call sound advice, or do you have sort of a little sort of sound advice mantra that you use that have served you throughout your life?
I think that there's a quote, madmen and saints swim in the same waters, and what drowns one transforms the other. So we can be transformed by our challenges. It doesn't mean that they won't be uncomfortable, but that they actually make us more of who we're meant to be. So and to take some time to watch some inspiring movies, because what you'll see about resilience is playing out in all of the really inspiring movies, children's movies as well.
Oh, neat. Okay. Well, I appreciate your time. For the audience who's listening, on the website, which will be the soundadvicesales.com/podcast, I will have all of Missy's contact information. So if you'd like to reach out to her, Missy does work with people individually and in groups and in training. And she's on Facebook if you want to reach with her on Facebook at the Omnibus Center. And we'll give her email, her website, and her other information there. Missy, thank you so much for doing the podcast with us today, and for sharing such great information. I've taken a couple of notes, and I'm going to go back and when I listen again and make sure I get some more. I do appreciate it. It's just super helpful, and yeah, I'm with you. I want to be on this journey with the resilience as well. I love that word, but I really love sort of what that means in my life. Like, having a resilient life just sounds like a really worthy, a worthy goal, or a worthy experience to strive for.
Thank you, and I appreciate the work that you do, Phyllis. Thank you for bringing us these podcasts. I love them.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Till next time, have fun, be you, and share your sound advice with the world. For more info and show notes, or to connect with Phyllis, go to soundadvicesales.com or on Facebook at Sound Advice Sales.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM. Women's voices amplified.